Stuck in a rut, frustrated, irritable, wanting better results, chasing better outcomes? Well, you've landed on the Me&my Health Up podcast. This podcast is all about enhancing and enlightening your well-being. And I'm your host, Anthony Hartcher, a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. This topic is on transforming the rut into freedom. So transforming that feeling stuckness and you feeling very irritable, frustrated, and you want to break free. You want to get out of the rut. How do we do this? How do we get out of this rut and get into freedom? So I'm going to be talking about why we get stuck in a rut, and then secondly, how we can actually break those shackles and move forward and fly and soar. So I'm sure you're wanting that outcome is to fly and soar and feel like in a state of flow, as opposed to feel like you're headbutting a brick wall or just keep walking into the brick wall. And, it's that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So let's get into the episode. So why do we feel stuck, frustrated, irritable? Well, the reason why I've come up with this podcast topic is a consultation I recently had. And I had a client that was feeling very stuck and in a like frozen, in time, or, frozen in a state, and couldn't see a way forward, couldn't see the path forward, and losing that light. And essentially that road seems so long and enduring on, and thinking, I'm never going to get there. I can't get there. I don't have the resources or the willpower to get there. What we need to, first of all, look at is, if you're feeling frustrated and irritable, is to become aware as to what's driving that frustration and irritability. So it can be you get into this routine and you actually don't like the routine. And so it's then being aware of what is it that you don't like and what is it that you can change. So what's within your control and what you can change in relation to the routine. My client was outcomes. So they were very frustrated that they weren't getting the outcomes that they desired. And we need to put context around some of these outcomes that we desire, because sometimes the outcome that we can just really chasing is this perfection around a particular art. So my client is a 3D artist, and they always not happy with the work they're producing because they're comparing it to artists that have been in the industry for a lot longer, decades longer. And so their artwork, of course, isn't as good as the masters. And so obviously my client was very aware that, yes, I'm frustrated, I'm irritable, and I'm not achieving the outcomes I want, but I made her more aware of the bigger picture that I could see that she couldn't see. And so it was bringing her attention that these outcomes that the masters achieve, and we can see it on social media all the time. It's like the highlight reels. It's like people achieving success. It's the presentation of the gold medal. It's the presentation of the award. But what we're not aware of, so we're conscious of the award and the outcome, but what we're not aware of is what's behind that, or what they did behind the scenes. So the BTS, the behind the scenes, and that's the sweat, that's the work, and that's the effort we're putting. We don't see that whole journey. We just see the outcome, and we have this conscious awareness of the outcome, and we're not seeing the bigger picture. So what I helped my client through was seeing the bigger picture and what actually transpired, the reality of the situation, as opposed to this illusion that we just go from where we are today to this amazing outcome, this amazing result. So if you feel this way about you and your outcomes and your life, then it's because you see the gap. You see the gap where you currently are, and you're fixated on that gap to where you want to be. And so your obsession or your conscious awareness is just around the gap. And what I was reminding my client is that they need to focus on the process in order to fill that gap and get immersed into embracing the process and making sure you're measuring that you're on track and heading in the right direction. Because the outcome can always transform and morph based on your progress. And in time, you might realize that, that original goal isn't quite the goal that I wanted, and this is more what I've wanted. And so we need to be flexible on that outcome and not fixated on a particular outcome, unless it's really, really important to you. And the more we're flexible with the outcome, the more we can grow, the more we can allow it to be what we want it to be based on our progress in time. The more fixated we get, the more rigid we get, the more black and white we get. That can serve a person. That can, particularly if they really very strong on the why as to why they want that outcome, why it's really important to them, then that's okay. But if you're heading in the direction, you're not quite sure of the outcome, but you know the measures of success to let you know that you're on track, that's more important, to focus on those measures of success. And my client wasn't recognizing the progress she was making. She was fixated on the gap, the difference, the delta. And that was frustrating her. When you compare yourself with masters that have sweat like they've been sweating over this and doing the process for decades, then you've got this illusion that you just arrived there. It requires work to get there. And it's very much reminds me of when I started martial arts, was that you're standing at the back of the class and you're taking instructions off the karate master. And the karate master does everything in your eyes perfect. But in their eyes, they've still got room for improvement. But in your eyes, compared to where you're at, you see a big gap. And you've got to put that into context, that in order to get to the front of the room, in order to master and perfect those techniques, they've put in lots of hours, many hours that you haven't seen. So it's what you want to focus on is the behind the scenes work, and really embrace that, realizing that when people actually get the outcome, what they reflect on and what is truly heartening for them is to see how far they've come, and the journey that it took them to get there. And so they reflect on the hard times, the difficult times, and how they climbed their way out of those difficult times and kept going and kept persisting and kept being consistent with the process. And so those hard times that they grew the most out of, that they actually take away the biggest growth and the biggest learnings. And so when we're on our journey, we can see these hard times as, is this worth it? And it is good to question whether it's worth it. Is it important enough for you to persist through the pain in order to get to that outcome? Or are you sacrificing things that are really important to you to get to that outcome, that are more important to you than that outcome? You do need to go through this questioning. It's important questioning. And you really want to check in with your why all the time, because as we age, what's important to us also changes. And so it might not be as important as when you first started out. And so it's worth doing those check-ins as to whether it's really important to you, and it's really important that you're continuing to make the sacrifices that you need to make in order to achieve that outcome. So it's really important that we get realistic in terms of the goal setting and the outcome, that we understand, yes, that's the top, but what's behind getting there is a lot of climbing, a lot of work, a lot of sweat, a lot of persistence, a lot of dedication, and a lot of sacrifices along the way. And that it's not a linear path, that it is, you'll go up for a bit and may fall for a little bit, but then because of the fall, you learn better ways to ascend. And so you're perfecting your technique. And so you might go up the next run or the next 50 meters or the next 100 meters or the next step a whole lot quicker, because you're mastering your technique. You're finessing what you do. And it's the same with my podcast. When I first started, I was well and truly far away from, ever being the Joe Rogan or the Andrew Huberman. And so, yes, I look up and, I'm in awe in terms of what they've accomplished, but I'm also well aware of what they've put in order to get to where they are today. And I'm doing it my way. And so I'm going on my path, get to, I guess, a podcast that is getting more reach, because ultimately I want more reach, because I want to help more people. I want to help have a greater impact on more people. And in order to do that, I need to extend my reach. But I realize it takes time, and it takes me continuing to finesse the way in which I deliver messages, my communication, my equipment. There's all these little tweaks, these 1%ers that I can make over time. But I see this as a great way of achieving my why, which is to enhance and enlighten the well-being of others. And so it's well aligned to that. And I'm putting in the time and dedication in order to get there. But I may not get the Huberman status. I may not get the Joe Rogan, and most likely I won't. But I'm not worried. I'm going on my own journey. And all I want to see is that I'm making progress and I'm reaching more people. So it may never hit the numbers of Andrew Huberman or Joe Rogan, but it'll be the Anthony Hartcher show. And I will have my tribe, the people that want to hear my message. And I'll be very grateful for those people to listen to that message. And so what I want you to relate this to is a goal that you're chasing that you're feeling a bit stuck in at the moment, a bit stuck. And what I'd like you to do is you're aware that you're stuck. Now you want to change that perception of feeling stuck. And it's starting to be more realistic as to where you're at and to understand the size of the gap as opposed to thinking that it's overnight. It's not overnight. So those people that are doing really well in your area of profession or have achieved the goal that you want to achieve, get a better understanding of what they put in behind the scenes. So you get a more realistic picture of what you're pursuing. And so it's not just a fantasy that it's an overnight success. You actually get real as to what is required on a daily basis, on a constant basis to get there. And so then you realize that, okay, they didn't do it overnight. They've put in the time. I need to put in the time. I accept that. But now what I want you to do is not focus on the gap, is focus on the process. And so it's being well aware of how do you know that you're on track. So look for those key performance metrics, indicators that let you know that you're heading in the right direction. I have key metrics around my podcast that I'm constantly measuring, and I'm trying new things and I'm seeing if it changes, shifts the needle and things like that. And I'm learning off others. I'm constantly learning off others that have achieved great success, what they did, and seeing whether it applies to my journey. And so I know my metrics. I know what I'm looking to do. And I'm aware that there's these other tangible things that aren't associated with those direct metrics, such as, well, they probably are in a way associated, is that I want to be a better communicator. And obviously, if I'm a better communicator, I probably will move the needle a bit. So yes, they are associated. But I was just thinking that that's the thing that when I listen back on episodes, am I repeating words that are frustrating the listeners? Do I need to move things out of my vocab or transform my vocabulary and ascend it and get new vocabulary and get better at pronouncing words, allowing pauses instead of ums and ahs, all those sort of things, just getting more comfortable with delivering the message, allowing time and space. For me, it's like I used to blurt out at 100 miles an hour. I think I need to be fast, talk fast, but I know that now people can put it on fast anyway. So if I talk slow and be very clear with my messaging, then they can fast it up anyway. I don't need to speak fast. So that's what you want to be aware of, is how do you know that you're on track to achieve that outcome? Then you want to focus on doing what you need to do on a daily basis that's going to progress you forward. And that's what I focus on. For me, it's coming up with the content that's relevant to my podcast. It's coming up with SEO titles, SEO friendly titles that people might be searching for that content that I'm about to produce. Then it's coming up with a description that fits the episode. Then it's coming up with graphics that might appeal to those visual people, as opposed to, so there's so many different things I can improve around my episodes, and I'm looking to do those incremental improvements. I set a goal in terms of how much content I want to generate per week. And then I think strategically about the episode. How do I want the episode to flow? How do I want it to start out? How I want it to end it? And so I'm thinking of all these things, and that's what I'm focused on. And I'm really engaged with that process. So I realize that the better I get at this process, the more I improve in this process, ultimately the numbers will speak for themselves. And so I'm not fixated on the metrics and how fast they're moving. It's more that I'm progressing with the metrics around doing what needs to be done in order to get better. And so each episode, I'm taking away some key learnings. Recently, I've listened to an episode and I was repeating some words repetitiously all the time. And I was thinking, if I was a listener, I'd get frustrated hearing that word repeated over and over again. So I took note of what those words were, and I've actually forgotten them now, but I don't think I've actually said these words in this episode. So being consciously aware really helps you make change and improve. And so I think one of the things I mentioned to my client was that reflection. So after each episode, I reflect, okay, yes, I got some key messages across. Did I miss anything? What could improve? How could I better say it? Could I add in a story? Could I, share it in a better way the person would understand, or the listener? And so I'm constantly reflecting back on the episode, taking notes on what I can improve next time. And so that's the small incremental improvements, which are in my control. But I'm not focused on the gap in terms of listening to a Joe Rogan episode and thinking, oh, I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't have the money for that. All these sort of things. They're a bit out of my control, but maybe they'll come within my control as I make these smaller incremental progresses. So obviously, the more listeners, the more people I reach, I might attract sponsorship that will enable me more resources in terms of reinvestment into the podcast. I may end up in a studio. I don't know. I'm not currently in a proper recording soundproof studio, but over time, I may have the funding or the support or the sponsorship in order to make that investment. And so I'm not fixated on having that gap. It's more realizing that I need to do the small things and perfect other things that are within my control. And over time, other things, my area of my growth will grow and my area of influence will grow, and I'll have more abilities to do more things as I grow. So I'm focusing more on that daily growth, and that comes through that reflective awareness. So being really, really focused on what you can change, implement on the next time you're doing it. So in a martial arts sense, each class I go in, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to put my attention to improving that. And then every class, there's a new area, or I might be constantly working on one area over a period of time. But I realize overall, I've improved. If I look back at when I first started, my coordination's a whole lot better. My flexibility is a whole lot better. I'm much better than where I was. I think it was 4 years ago I started. And so I have come a long way, but the master still has all these perfect techniques, but I'm well aware that I've still got a long journey to go to fill that gap. And so I just focus on what I'm working on, where I'm at, and not fixated on that gap between me and the master. It's where I'm at, accepting that. So acknowledging that and realizing that it's the journey. It's the journey that you really want to embrace. And the more you embrace the journey, the more you feel that you're in a flow state as opposed to this stuck state. The only reason you have this stuck state is that constant comparison between where you're at and where you're wanting to be, and fixated on that gap. Because that gap's so large, you're not recognizing the small incremental progress. You're focusing on the big gap. Whereas if you focus on the small incremental progress and get fixated on that and perfecting that, over time, that gap will become smaller, but you won't get frustrated because you're not focused on the huge gap all the time. You just need to realize that, yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but I focus on what I can control on a daily basis, improve that, and constantly improve that. And over time, I will be narrowing that gap. But at the end of the day, you might not want the exact results of where you are at today, and you may allow it to transform into the form that you actually want by just making the progress and steady progress towards that direction. So it's more about the direction, making sure you've got the direction right, you've got the key measures of success to let you know that you're heading in the right direction. And then it's the daily action, the daily inputs. What can you do on a daily basis? And then reflecting, did you do it the best you could? What were the learnings? What could you improve next time? And then take that into, for me, the next episode or the next karate class. For my client, it was really being more aware of the progress they're making as opposed to focusing on the gap. So my client, I've got her working on where she is, what she can improve on, and recognizing that improvement and acknowledging that improvement. And that will keep the momentum going. And you won't be looking for this willpower. You won't need the willpower. You'll be internally driven from within, provided it's really important to you. And that's the other thing. It's not just picking and choosing, thinking that would be nice, that would be nice. It's something that you really, really desire, and it resonates with your heart and soul. That's that's really important, because otherwise what we do, so I'll give an example here, is I value my health, but I value my health holistically, and I focus on holistic health. I've never really been into the aesthetics of having like big muscles and picturing that as health. For me, it's about the application of doing health on a holistic basis regularly and consistently is more important. And that means I'm progressing, and I can measure my progress over time. And I see people with these amazing aesthetics and think, oh, that'd be nice to have. But for me, I'm not doing it for the aesthetics. I'm just doing it because I know it's making good progress around my health and maximizing my health span and maximizing my lifespan. But there are things out of my control. I can focus on my daily actions, but there's certain things in the environment that are there that are always going to be there, such as the microplastics and the air pollution and all these things. And, unless I really move to an isolated place, but I don't want to do that because I want to be connected with my family. That's more important. And so I'm willing to put up with some sacrifices around my health in order to meet other areas of my life that are really important to me. So if I was in an isolated area, I probably wouldn't have Wi-Fi and I wouldn't be able to do what's really meaningful to me, and that's enhancing and enlightening your well-being through my podcast. So that's another thing. That's why I don't want to end up in an isolated area with perfect air and no plastics and no microplastics, because I couldn't do what I'm here for. I couldn't fulfill my why, and that would be more distressing for me as opposed to having a perfect health environment. So there's the health environment and elements of that I can't control. So I focus on what I can control and do my best around that and optimize that. And as I said, I admire these people with these incredible looking bodies, and I think that would be nice to have. But for me, it's not health to me. I've got a different version of health, and would I be willing to put in the sweat equity or the hours into getting that muscle, generating that muscle, doing the fasting to strip down the body fat, all that sort of stuff? It's a real art form, and it requires a real dedication. And I'm thinking, yeah, it'd be nice to have to just put that six pack on me, but I'm not willing to put in the work to get it. And so I acknowledge that, and I think it's more a fantasy that I'm taking on, and thinking that I'd just like to have it, but I'm not willing to put in the work to get there, because that's the reality of the situation. I'd need to put in the work to get there. And so I'm not looking for hacks around that. And I think part of if you're looking for hacks and shortcuts, it means that it's not really, really, really important to you. Because if it's really important to you, you don't look for the shortcut or the easy path. You're willing to endure the hard road and do it, the consistent thing on a daily basis, because it's really important to you. If you're looking at TikTok and trying to get the hacks on how to get it quickly, then to me, you want to question what you're chasing, what you're pursuing, because to me, deep down, it's not really important to you. So like if I wanted the aesthetics of a six pack, I could look at hacks and getting there faster, but ultimately I'd probably give up, because I'd become more aware of how difficult it is to get there. And I think I could hack my way to there, but you can't hack your way to anything. You can't shortcut your way to anything. You talk to any master, they've put the hours in. They may have found some quicker ways of doing things over time, but ultimately it was hard work that got them there. There was some talent along the way, but ultimately still it was hard work that got them there and kept them there. So some talented people can get quick success, but they won't remain there unless they're willing to put in the hard work, because there's people without the talent that are willing to put in the hard work that will outperform that person with talent that's not willing to put in the hard work over time. So again, that's another way to work out whether the goal is important to you, is to see whether you're looking for hacks and shortcuts. If you are, question yourself, is it really important to you? And how to test it, keep asking yourself, why are you willing to make the sacrifices in order to get to the goal that you want to get to? Why is it really important to you? Why is that really important to you? Why is that really important to it? And you want to keep asking the why until it makes you cry, because then it's connected to your heart and soul. When you cry, that's when you're completely in sync. The mind's in sync with the heart. And so you want to get that physiological shift, that physiologic crying response, that outlet that, yes, it's so important. And you feel the tears of gratitude, because it's so important, and the brain and heart are completely aligned, in sync, and it's so important to you. You'll be willing to put the hard yards in and not worry about trying to find the shortest, quickest path. I mean, you will be doing that automatically because it's so important to you. You'll be wanting to perfect what you're doing and correct it and make that progress. And you'll see quicker paths at time, but most of the time it's just putting in the work and being consistent with the process and doing that reflection at the end of it. So the best thing is that you're chasing a meaningful goal. The way in which you test it, if it's a meaningful goal, is to ask yourself why, and keep asking yourself why until you cry. Then it's really important to you, and then you'll be willing to put in the sweat equity to get to where you want to get to. So I hope this episode has been really enlightening for you in terms of why you might be stuck. Again, most likely it's because you're focused and fixated on the gap, and that's all you can see is how long it's or how big that gap is and where you are today. And you're thinking, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And you're just focused on the gap, but you're not doing anything about it. What we want to do is focus on what we can control and do that on a regular basis. Be consistent with it. Do the reflective exercise. See how we can improve things. That's the hack, is how do we improve what we're doing on a daily basis? That's how you hack your way to success, is that regular reflection and improvement and implementing that improvement. If you're wanting some help in this area, I'm here to help you. So please reach out to me, and I'd love to help you in terms of getting unstuck, unleashing the shackles, and soaring free into freedom, where you don't feel like it's a chore. You love the process. And so I can really help set you up with making sure you're pursuing a goal that's truly deeply meaningful to you, how to set yourself up with metrics to let you know you're on track, and how to stay focused on the process and making sure that you're reflecting and making those improvements over time. So I can coach you through that whole process and really get you into this flow state so that you love what you do. It's not a chore. It's not a chore. You are soaring free and you're in a state of flow. Every day is a state of flow. You don't feel like you're headbutting a brick wall. You are moving through the brick wall. So if you'd like help, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you. And please share this with others that you think would find this of value, that are feeling stuck in a rut and would love to break free of those shackles and be the best version of themselves and continue to health up. Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare, or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand me&my Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. me&my Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you may to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, me&my Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason. No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of me&my Health Up.